Okay, good evening and welcome to the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, February 14th, 2023. We'd like to call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Carrie, can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Andy Duran.
Present.
Ann Hill.
Present.
Mark Berry.
Present.
Carrie Steinbach present. Tim Penich.
Present.
Lauren Hirsch.
Present.
All right, and Amy Kanzani, who will be joining us shortly, but we do have a quorum so we can begin. Let's please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, and moving on to number 3, the reading of the mission, vision, and values for Lake Bluff School District 65. And we've asked Amy Kotnick tonight to read that for us.
To provide each student with quality instruction, learning opportunities, and educational environments that inspire academic achievement, personal growth, and responsible citizenship. Excellence in education, enthusiasm for life, every student, every day.
Thanks, Amy. We'll move on to item number 4, public comment. At every Board of Ed meeting, we offer the opportunity for members of the public to address the board. We do have a few people in the audience tonight, so if anyone would like to speak, please identify yourself and approach the podium if you would like. Not seeing any, and any comments
No
from home? Okay, great. There will be another opportunity later in the meeting. So we will move on to item number 5, addition of discussion item. At each board meeting, we offer the opportunity for board members to suggest a discussion item for future agendas. Anybody have anything for tonight? It's Valentine's Day. We are ready just to buzz on through, aren't we? Okay, then we'll move on to the discussion presentations portion of the evening. We do have a few items up for discussion tonight. The first one related to the extended school year. So we'll invite Tracy and Kathleen to join us at the front.
And welcoming Kathleen as her first year as ESY principal this summer, so thanks for all the planning she's done so far.
Thank you.
Share your screen.
I have a slideshow that Amy will put up. It's the summer one.
Oh, it's in the middle there,
there it is.
Amy. There you go.
There we go.
Okie dokie. So we are really excited to be offering summer school and extended school year this year, and we are going to be calling it Summer Scholars, a summer school experience. And so if you want to go ahead, thank you. We'll be offering preschool. We'll be doing a blended model similar to what we have now, Jumpstart to kindergarten. We'll be doing academics for incoming grades 1st through 8th, including reading, writing, and mathematics, with the understanding that 3.75 hours of straight academics is slightly challenging. We do intend to offer wellness and music, giving some break to the day, and then we'll have extended school year for our students that are eligible. For our students that need them, we will be continuing to offer that continuum of supports, including speech, occupational therapy, and social work as needed. And so we will be meeting June 12th through the 30th with no school on Juneteenth, June 19th. Students will be there from 8:15 to 12 p.m., staff 8 to 12, and it will be Monday through Friday. So it's 14 days of instruction, and we'll be hosting it at LBES. Given the fact that we're running a program that's very similar to ones we've done in past years, we would anticipate the cost to be the same. Last year, due to the COVID impact support, we did not charge participants. This year, we're returning to a tuition-based model. The tuition fee for the programming would be $400. For transportation, historically, we've charged $50. This year, we're upping it to $100. For our students that qualify for ESY, there would be no charge. So very exciting news. We do have a large amount of our staff already interested. So the only positions that I still need to fill are the ones with asterisks. So that would be a speech pathologist and then a special education preschool teacher. But we do have 9 teachers slated to do the academic portion, 1 preschool teacher, 4 learning behavior specialists, 6 teaching assistants, our occupational therapist, our school psychologist. We have a school nurse and our secretary ready to rock and roll. So it's very exciting that we have that many people interested and ready to help our students. In addition, because it is a half-day program, we're partnering with the Lake Bluff Park District, and they have a half-day afternoon camp available for students in grades 1 through 5, They'll also run from June 12th to June 30th and from 12:15 to 3 p.m. So they will have people meet us at school and then walk the students over to the Park District for camp. And this is a flyer that we've created to publicize the event. We're hoping to get this out by the end of the week. It's also been translated into Spanish. That will go home in the mailboxes for middle school and elementary school students. We're also going to be putting it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, thank you. And then we can also work together to put it on the website, really to push the word. Registration would open March 1st and close the 18th, really giving us enough time to make sure that we have everything in order to support our students to the best of our ability. And come experience the fun. It's going to be a really great time. I love summer school, and I'm excited to be doing it again, so I hope to see a lot of our students participating. And if anyone has any questions, you can reach out to me anytime. Does anyone have any questions now?
Just had one.
Sure.
Are you capping the classrooms at any specific number?
So right now, we're definitely looking at capping the preschool and kindergarten classrooms, and we'll start to talk about what the other numbers would look like, given our interest.
Do you know traditionally how many students we've had in summer school?
Last year, there were 80 participants.
Okay. Across K through 8?
Yes.
Okay. And my assumption with the raising of the bus fee is just because transportation costs have gone up? Is that the
That is
reason for
correct.
that?
And it has been pretty consistent the whole time. And so it just, as we were discussing at admin team, it made sense to increase it by the amount.
Thank you.
Our students that are on fee waivers would obviously be exempt from that.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, just my question, how's staffing looking? I know it's early, but for summer school?
It's looking really great.
Good.
Yeah, there are 2 positions that I have left to fill.
Oh, that's what you said, great,
Yeah.
only 2, great.
I'm very excited about that.
It's
very
been a problem in the past,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to, speaking of staffing, move on to item B with the staffing plan for next year. Dr. Leali, turn it over to you.
Thank you. I don't know why it's showing this way in my, here we go. All right. Okay, so happy to be here. This is the time of year that we talk about staffing for next school year. So this is the staffing recommendations for the 23-24 school year. We always start with our mission and vision. We start our meetings this way now, so I don't have to read them again, but obviously we keep this in mind whenever we're making plans. So what we're presenting tonight is a recommended plan for staffing for the 23-24 school year, including numbers of staff by category. Just as a reminder, the board approves the staff number of FTE, and the administrative team is in charge and responsible for allocating the resources according to the needs. We'll provide some rationale for the staffing changes and some context around that and some anticipated impacts that we think we might see next year. Some notes before we begin. So again, the board is considering the high-level plan. We are trying to include so this is a little bit of a change, all of the staff that we need on our staffing plan reflected in the numbers, utilizing less contracted and purchased services. So in the past, we have outsourced some positions, and then those have not shown up on our actual staffing plan. We're trying to be a little bit more transparent about this and include those staff members for everyone to see as they impact our ratio and the student services that we provide. So we've tried to hire some of those positions in-house, and then those are reflected on our plan. And then we still have just a couple that we're including in this for you to make note of. I want to make sure that we talk about the fact that the recommended changes indicate the best effort to meet the needs of our students and staff as we see them for next year. None of the recommendations that we're making are intended to communicate that there's a problem with any programming that we've been offering, or that anyone on our staff is not doing what they need to be doing. Ultimately, staffing is about an allocation of resources and about prioritizing the needs that we feel like we have from any given year to year. And we look forward to strategic planning to continue some of the conversations that will start tonight in terms of prioritizing where we want to spend our money and where we want to put our staff to support our students. All right. So some big goals in the staffing recommendations this year are to reduce class sizes in the rising 3rd and 5th grade classes by increasing the number of sections. Keep class sizes low in the rising second grade class by increasing one section in second grade. Increasing the number of multilingual support staff, as we've talked about before. We would like to maintain the additional math support that we put in as COVID impact. We'd like to maintain that for another year, given that we're seeing that as a beneficial resource for our students as we're coming out of the pandemic. Increase support for district-level curriculum and student services, and return to a school-wide enrichment model at the elementary level. So a while ago, this district partnered with Northwestern University to design an enrichment program that was intended to make sure that all students had access and opportunity to enrichment activities and experiences. Over time, this happens all the time, things shift, and the program has kind of moved in different ways and is now kind of looking a little bit different than it did when it was designed. And obviously, we've been through some changes in terms of our district demographic makeup, what kinds of supports we're providing to our students, specifically our second language learners. Our data's changed now after COVID. So what you'll see in our recommendations is sort of taking a pause on that program to bring Northwestern back in, to help us take a look at what we intended to do some time ago, where we are now, and what we need to do moving forward so that we can make sure that we continue on with a school-wide model that really impacts all of our students. Just as context for decision-making at an administrative level, first and foremost is fiscal responsibility. We've talked a lot about our budget. We've talked a lot about the tax levy and the fact that our community invests a great deal of money in our school system, and we want to make sure that we are maximizing the resources that we're given as a district. Second to that, or equal to that, is making sure that we're putting the resources where they need to be so that our students are growing and achieving. We do have some community expectations in terms of class size. Our community values smaller class sizes. There's no hard and fast number to anything we've ever put out there, but expectations are, from my perspective and the administrative team's perspective, lower than 25. And so that's where some of these decisions are coming in. There's some research around that we'll need to talk about in the strategic planning process in terms of what yields the most impact on student achievement in terms of class size, but really, anecdotally, we're feeling it at elementary right now, and so we want to try to address that, as well as maintain and make sure that our enrichment programming is doing what we say that we want it to do. And then obviously this plan tries to reflect changing in student and staff needs. They've changed over the last 2 to 3 years for sure, but even over the last 5 to 7 to 10 years, and some of that historical data will be in the presentation tonight. So cutting to the chase, we have a recommended staffing plan, which represents an increase in the overall full-time equivalent positions of 1.5. It also represents an increase in the overall number of staff by 2.7, which is inclusive of an administrative support position at the district office, which isn't included in our teaching, our licensed FTE numbers, and the additional 0.2 payroll position that we put in place in the middle of this year. And then we also have a second staffing plan, which represents an overall increase of 2.5. And I'll talk about that in a moment, but that doesn't impact the overall number of staff. So we'll talk about those in a second. Plan 1 includes the full pause on our enrichment programming, where our 2 enrichment teachers would move into classroom positions for this school year while we audit the program with Northwestern and get back to a model that we think will be effective for school-wide enrichment. But we do want to emphasize that the 5th grade math enrichment would stay in place. It would just be addressed at LBMS, which it has been in the past. We've had students travel from LBES to LBMS to have that 5th grade math enrichment program. It requires transportation, but then we provide that there and the students come back. That's, again, our recommended plan. The reason to do that is because it saves us additional FTE when we're increasing the class sizes at elementary in those 3 grades. In Plan 2, which we think we can sustain from a budget perspective, we could keep 1 enrichment / maybe a differentiation teacher to support the audit with Northwestern and continue to support the 5th grade math enrichment in-house at LBES. I don't know if that person would be the one teaching the 5th grade math enrichment, but that person could replace maybe a 5th grade teacher who would continue on with that program. So that's really the only difference between the two plans. These are the shifts that are included in both plans. So currently, we have a library assistant in each of our buildings. We are going to move to one library assistant that will coordinate services for both buildings. We are going to reduce the full-time SEL support. Those are 2 SEL positions. One was contracted through True North, bless you, prior to the pandemic. That was supposed to be a 1-year position. We are now on year 3 with that. And then we are also going ahead and taking away the SEL support that was added COVID impact. So this is the 2nd year of that one. Again, was meant to be a year at a time just to see how our needs were. At this time, the SEL support, those 2 support personnel are supporting most with curriculum. The goal for those 2 programs was to build up our Tier 1 social emotional learning curriculum and then hand it off to our teachers so that they can embed it in the regular school day. And we're almost done with that work. They have also provided some support for assessment and direct student counseling, but again, those needs we feel are going to be able to be met by our social workers and psychs. We are going to reduce just a little bit our speech and language support, and that's based on the fact that we have some students exiting their IEPs, and that will be, that reduction will come out of the contracted services that we utilize through True North. Again, we will be increasing the number of sections in each of our grades, but we are not considering hiring additional related arts for those sections. So what will happen is that some of our related arts classes will get a little bit bigger at the elementary, probably in PE, in order to take in those additional sections in 2nd, 3rd, and 5th grades. But our spaces are big enough. We've been talking and brainstorming with the team at different ways that we could do that and accommodate for those students. Dr. Margaret Ryan's position will shift to Director of Curriculum and Educational Technology. If you remember, when we hired Dr. Ryan, that was part of her job description, was to do some innovative curriculum work and instructional work. Not a lot has happened this year, basically because she's been auditing and fixing up our systems and making sure our technology is in order. But she'll be shifting to work with myself and Tracy Rorick and Jackie Tivador on doing some more work around curriculum and instruction. Joe Jaxie, who's been supporting in curriculum, will shift to Coordinator Student Services to be working more specifically with Tracy and in both of the buildings to work on our MTSS services and support some of the SEL work. Some shift that's going to happen here has to do with space as well. As you can imagine, space is at a premium at our elementary school, and adding 3 additional sections is going to put a squeeze on us a little bit. So some of our offices may be shifting into classroom workspaces, or people might be sharing offices to accommodate those 3 extra sections. So the additional positions that are not accounted for within the shifts will be 1 additional classroom teacher at LBES. The 1.5 multilingual teachers, as you remember, you already approved a 1.0 multilingual teacher. We have yet to staff that position. We kind of anticipated that that would be hard to do in the middle of the year. So we're planning on having that 1.5 for the full year next year. And then in order to support the additional curriculum work that Margaret will be doing, we're hiring another administrative assistant at the district office who would support with student registration as well as curriculum and technology. And we'd be looking for someone who is bilingual to support our Spanish-speaking families as they register and with questions on transportation and things like that in the district office. A little bit of historical context. This is just a chart indicating all this information is available on our AFR reports that are online. But essentially, if you go back to school year 17-18, you can see our enrollment trends, the percent of our low-income students, our total number of teachers, our total number of administrators, and then the total amount of staff. The part in the parentheses is just the approximate number of FTE that we're outsourcing or contracting through either True North or, at the time, through Diopath for technology support. So I've just added those in there because they haven't always been included in our full staff counts, but certainly we've had those bodies in supporting our students and staff. Mark?
Hey,
I
thank
see
you.
your
Can you
hand
hear me?
raised.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Just for the massive viewing audience, can you explain the difference between the total staff and FTE and administration? What accounts for those extra bodies?
Sure, I can. So FTE are full-time equivalent licensed teachers. So those would be classroom teachers, fine arts teachers, special education, related arts, social workers, psychs, licensed personnel. Those are our FTE that we include in that column. Administrators on our team are our building level administrators, which we have 4 now, and then 4 district office administrators. And then the total staff includes both those columns as well as our confidential staff, our administrative support, custodial, maintenance, all other teaching assistants, people that aren't included in those 2 categories.
So the final column is all in, that's everybody.
Final column is all in, correct?
Yeah. Can I make a suggestion going forward on this? Mm-hmm. It might be interesting to include a chart like this in someplace on our website or in our ongoing frequently asked questions document with a narrative alongside it to help explain some of the milestones that we've hit over the years and why we've made some of the decisions we've made on these increases, because it's really common for people to ask if the enrollment is down from 2018. I mean, I've had this in the past for over a decade now, same questions. Why do we have more staff? And we've always made very careful, well thought out decisions, but it would be really nice to say, hey, take a look at this chart. It explains everything.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion. A lot of this information is included in the AFR. I pulled it directly out of that in terms of the numbers, but I think the narrative is important too. Our demographics have definitely changed, and something that happens when we have more students with second language needs who are multilingual, or students with IEPs, or students from low-income backgrounds. A lot of times what comes along with that are additional supports based on their plans or based on support that they need, or teacher's assistance. So that absolutely can impact the overall staffing. So we can do some of that work.
Thanks.
So tonight we're recommending, like I said, Plan 1. I'm happy to answer any questions, or entertain any discussion. Again, I want to make sure that everyone understands the rationale behind the recommendation. Every program, every additional support that we have is beneficial to our kids, but there are definitely trade-offs when we're working within a budget. And low class sizes are wonderful and a good thing, because not only do you have some additional personal attention that can be given with those low classes, but you also have the opportunity to differentiate and provide some of those supports that other personnel might provide as well. So like I said, enrichment is an important thing for us. It's something that we believe all students should have access to, and some students should have more access to in time with their peers. But we think it's time to really revisit that and retake a look at it, and this is a nice opportunity for us to take a little bit of a pause and rethink about that.
So I know there's some questions that went around earlier this week, so I want to encourage everyone to ask those if you feel straight. With me, I thank you for putting all this into context. I think that's great. I appreciate the increasing the sections for the rising 3rd and 5th graders. I know that's been an issue in those grade levels this year, and we were kind of surprised by how many students we got in that regard. So remedying that for next year is great. And I think the community, I'm excited about going through strategic planning as we start to revalue some of these things, but I know that low class sizes has been a value here for a long time. I get a little concerned with taking both enrichment positions out this year while we're auditing. I would love to say it'd be great if we have low class sizes and one of those enrichment. I don't know how the board feels about that, but I think you put it well. You said it well, and I know we want to be fiscally responsible, but I do think that, given that we're coming off a pretty difficult couple of years, low class size is important, but I also think that an enrichment model going from 2 to 0 it doesn't sit right with me. So I'd just throw that out there for a conversation as well.
What's our numbers in enrichment? Like, do we know how many? I mean, I know you know, is that even public knowledge?
So you can, Kelly,
How
if
many
you can.
students you're asking?
Yeah.
It's challenging to provide a quantity because the model itself is flexible, which is what we appreciate so much about it. There's not a line in the sand where students are identified as gifted and talented and are regularly and consistently pulled out to work with a specialist. Sometimes it's unit-based, based on a pretest, where students are accessing that enrichment. The other blurred line is that the enrichment can be delivered by the classroom teacher with support and resources provided by the enrichment specialist. So it's challenging to give an exact number. We do have a high number of students who perform at the 90th percentile and above, which is often a quantity or an amount, a score that's looked at in terms of determining those needs.
And part of the caseload of the enrichment staff has been coaching teachers as well. So some of the day has been spent consulting or providing resources and things like that. So it's a little bit difficult to quantify exactly.
Okay, and we're speaking mainly math. We only have math enrichment right now,
We have
right?
reading and math.
Reading, oh, yeah, that's right, sorry.
Mark has his hand up.
Mark?
Yeah, I have a recommendation that maybe falls under the header of a future agenda item, but I think it'd be really helpful for the board, the community, and whoever's involved in strategic planning to learn about the state of the art, the state of the science on classroom size and instruction. So I would request a presentation to the board sometime in the future, perhaps before strategic planning starts, or while strategic planning is going on, about classroom size and what is the state of the science? What is, so we can all make really great decisions based on data.
Thanks, Mark.
That's a great idea.
I have a note.
That answer you gave to Ted.
Yeah, so I can tell you just without a very formal presentation, really the research would indicate that you yield the most results when you're at about a 15 or 16 to 1 ratio, which is pretty low. And not too many districts or schools get to that ratio, but what I can say is that when we have a classroom of students in a grade, especially at elementary, that class number is not the number that is in the room all day. We have many students that go out for intervention or for special services, speech and language, who have IEPs, and so many times those class numbers are fluid. And so there are times during the day, specifically during ELA and math, where those class numbers are closer to the ratio that the research would say would make the biggest impact. But obviously, I think anecdotally, what you notice as a teacher is the less bodies in the room, the more opportunity there is for personal connection, more opportunity there is for relationship building, for watching out for behaviors and things like that. So strictly looking at achievement, the numbers are pretty low. But again, I think anybody who's been a teacher, who's been in a classroom, can anticipate that each additional body in there creates an additional set of work, an additional person to connect with and learn about.
Any other comments, questions for Dr. Lealy?
I want to ask about the math enrichment moving over to, if it would take a certain number of kids and they would travel over to LBMS. Do we worry, or how do we account for missing time at LBES for transportation?
So I think we can talk about that, how it's been done in the past, but essentially the schedules have had to be coordinated pretty carefully between the two buildings and the 6th grade math block. Kelly can talk about historically maybe how that's worked.
Yeah, I talked lately about COVID fog, and so this happened pre-COVID, so some of those things are not as fresh in my brain, and Jay, you could probably chime in too. The one good thing is if we, making this decision early as we are preparing our schedules for next year, we can be really intentional about when the 5th grade math is scheduled so it aligns well with a 6th grade math class that the students would be traveling to and would have the least impact on their schedule. I don't know that we were as timely last time we did this, but we did try. Their lunch time was a little bit shifted, I think, is what happened. So they might have come back and had lunch at a little bit of a different time. Part of what they talk about with any kind of acceleration is the trade-off. And so in order to have access of that kind of right level of learning, there is going to be a trade-off. I think making the decision early would help us in maybe they get on the bus in the morning, takes them right to the middle school as opposed to starting off at elementary school, or their day ends. I think we can get creative with some of that and limit other academic moments that they would miss.
And just for context, I've worked in a couple of other districts. This is not an unusual practice, either from elementary to middle or from middle to high school. I've done both in other districts where 8th graders will travel to the high school and they would receive their typically math instruction at the other building. So.
And I believe we send LBMS students to the high school, don't we? Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
How much of an issue is the space, and is there costs associated with retrofitting those? Because I'm not opposed to I understand there's expectations and with regard to the lower class sizes, but it seems there's a lot of work to get there, to have those extra sections.
There's definitely work, but I wouldn't say that it's unusual in this building and in this district. When you have one building that has kind of grades that move in and out that are bigger or smaller, it's not unusual for a teacher to have to move to a new grade level and to have to shift classrooms. Definitely, we're on the high end in terms of sections for this building and what it was built for. And so we'll have to repurpose some of the smaller spaces, but we won't be doing a lot of actual retrofitting or anything like that. The majority of it'll be just moving furniture and kind of resetting people in different spaces. Not that to say that it's not disruptive to our staff and where they have their things and where they have a home. But we can certainly make those accommodations. The nice thing about the way our middle school schedule is right now is that even adding this additional section in the 5th grade, when that class moves on to the middle school, we will not need that additional teacher to be in the middle school. We have enough staff to handle that, that class of students. So this is how it goes enrollment-wise at LBES, it ebbs and flows, and we just happen to be at a higher end of things. And while we could sustain and have classes of 25, that's not something that has worked out too well this year. And like Andy said, we were not anticipating a lot of the move-ins that we had in 2nd and 4th grade specifically. So we did not start the year that way. We would, if we didn't have some of these sections, start the year at 25, which is the part that is a little scary because we've obviously had move-ins, and that's not something we want to risk at this point.
And sorry, the space like offices that would be converted to classrooms, are they like comparable size to a normal
So we
classroom?
wouldn't be converting any offices
Okay.
to classrooms. It would be maybe moving a couple specialists in together to coexist in
Okay.
small space together. Or we have some bigger rooms that have 2 specialists in there that could be a comparable size
Gotcha.
that have been used as a classroom before, and those folks would be just
Okay,
moved.
all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I know we're not approving this tonight, we're discussing it. I wonder if you wouldn't mind saying more about your rationale for recommending Plan 1 versus Plan 2. I think I understand that it's really about just the most fiscally responsible option. I think being extra thoughtful about that is great, and I think we all appreciate that. I just keep coming back to, we know that we want to reduce class size, especially in those 2 grades. Reduce class size in those 2 grades by adding a section, that's great. Both plans are going to do that. We know we want to revisit the model with Northwestern and perhaps some of the work that's taking place out of the classroom being brought back into the classroom in a tiered level, and I think that makes sense too. I do get a little concerned though, as it relates to dropping from 2 to 0. And I get concerned for administrator time, given that without an enrichment person, there isn't someone who can support that audit, and that would ultimately fall on administration too when you guys are already taxed. So I know that the fiscally responsible option, I think both options are fiscally responsible. That's my opinion. I think we can make it work. I guess I would want to know more about Plan 1 versus Plan 2, because I'm feeling strongly towards Plan 2, at least for this year, and I'm trying to understand
Yeah.
the recommendation versus what seems like might
Yeah,
provide more for
so
students.
the driving force with Plan 1 for our team is just making sure we're using our resources wisely. We already are, as you know, levying 5% when the impact that we're feeling is above 5%. You know, we are already feeling a 7% or greater impact on our budget. We have some things coming up in the next couple of years. One is a collective bargaining agreement with our teachers union that needs to be renegotiated. We don't know what our enrollment is going to look like next year. So in my opinion, to be conservative is important. It's also going to cost money to engage with another audit with Northwestern and to have consultants come in and to support us looking at data and talking to our teachers. And it's important work, but that also will be a cost. Because I think it worked really well last time. They were a great partner for us. They developed something that was really visionary and started out really working well and still has many great components to it. But if we're going to do the audit, we're going to be spending money on that. We have this opportunity with one class, that's a couple of classes that are coming through on the bigger side. The fiscally conservative part of me feels like I need to recommend that we scale back in another area. We've had many robust discussions about the budget and staffing in the last couple of months. These are not recommendations that we take lightly. We've talked with our staff, I've heard from parents. Our administrative team talks ad nauseum about what we really think is the right thing and where we need to allocate our resources so that we get the most out of it for our students. You'll see later, we're not recommending an increase in fees. We already feel like our families are, again, helping us with an increased tax levy and percent that way. So we're really, again, trying to be thoughtful. When I came in and was hired here, one of the first things that I talked with the previous board about and my predecessor was the immense amount of pride that this district had in kind of pulling in the reins on the budget and making sure that we had some really strong parameters around our fund balance and where we put our resources and making sure we weren't overstaffed. And so I keep that in mind just as much as I keep anything else in mind, especially our mission and vision, what we want for kids. So this is it's a substantial, in my mind, it's an increase. We've had a couple of increases. We've added staff, but we're trying to be thoughtful about really continuing to reevaluate where are the staff needed, what do our students need, what do we need to do for our staff. And so I feel I wouldn't have brought both proposals if I didn't think our budget could sustain them. I think they can. But again, the issue is prioritizing. And these are just important conversations for us to have as a community because needs change over time. So
reminds me now, I'm getting them confused in my head. Plan 1, we go down to 0 enrichment staff. For math enrichment, we could send 5th graders to LBMS. Only 5th graders would have math enrichment then?
yes, that's the program we would sustain.
Okay, and there'd be no other enrichment, reading
No,
or math
but we
for
do,
other?
we do differentiate within the classrooms. I don't want to make it sound like students wouldn't have enrichment opportunities. There would not be pull-out services with an enrichment teacher.
But we would still do, let's say, in reading in a certain grade level, have the different groups and the different, okay.
Yeah, and a lot of our teams have figured out different ways to do it utilizing their team. So Kelly talked about a pre-test and a post-test model. So when I was teaching even, we did this. You would pre-test the students, kind of group them out based on the unit. One teacher would take a group that needed more enrichment. A couple of teachers would take the group that was right on target, and one teacher would take the group that needs additional support. And you can differentiate that way using your team as well. And some of our teams already do that.
Yeah, like I know 4th and 5th grade already do that in math, right? So that could be done in reading or other areas if needed.
Reading is a little bit more difficult because it doesn't change quite as much. So reading as a set of skills doesn't change quite as much. But in math, when you're learning a new skill and you're pre-testing on those things, then you can change more often with the units.
Okay, and then in model number 2 or staffing plan number 2, what is happening with enrichment staff or the ability to differentiate in classrooms?
So the second model includes keeping one person and sort of redesigning a position that might offer differentiation support on the enrichment end for reading or math or writing, but also then would be able to provide that 5th grade experience at LBES and support with the audit with Northwestern. So that position would have to be redesigned. It wouldn't be like keep one or the other. We would have to really take a look at that position as supporting both reading, math, writing, and then just as an extra support for the audit as well.
And coaching too in that, right? Coaching would be in too in that.
So I guess my question would be, we've done the math enrichment moving, have we ever had 0 enrichment personnel?
Before
in the
we
past?
designed the enrichment program, right? It's been a
So
while.
how many years, so we've, I guess I'm just wondering what impact that would have on like our state testings and our like student growth in general. That's what-
Again, so and Mark, I'm gonna get you in a second. When we looked at prioritizing extra support for students in the classroom, we were initially going to be letting go of our math intervention as well. We haven't had a math intervention specialist, and so we added the SEL, we added the math support. We are not recommending taking that away yet. So that was supposed to be a COVID impact position. That's where we feel like our kids need the extra support, is with the math intervention. That's not to say that our math interventionists couldn't provide some enrichment opportunities if needed. And again, the whole focus of our professional development this year has been on professional learning communities and our teams working together to make sure that they're providing all the differentiated support that is needed for our students. And I want to emphasize, lower class sizes facilitate the ability of the classroom teacher to do more of that enrichment work. So all of our teachers are capable of doing that with the support of the resources that have been provided through the professionals working in the enrichment program now. In fact, we had before enrichment liaisons at each team, correct? So a lot of our teachers have been given additional training in enrichment and could step up and provide some of that support at the team level as well.
Okay, so it's not that we couldn't have enrichment opportunities, it's just we wouldn't have dedicated staff
That's right.
pulling kids out.
That's right.
Thank you.
Is there like a plan 3 that would, I mean, it would be more of a budget increase though, because that would be then,
That would keep both?
we're assuming like 3 full-time positions.
Yeah, that would be,
That
then,
would be.
because what we would be doing is essentially adding all 3 sections.
Right.
We'd be
And-
adding, and keeping the enrichment, yeah. And doing an audit, because I still think the audit is necessary.
And the reason why there isn't a plan 3 is money.
Budget.
Yep.
And for the audit, would anything be implemented that during the year, or is it mainly just to kind of?
I don't know. We've talked to Northwestern a couple times over the last couple of years, just for myself to get some history and background on how that was designed. I've talked to the enrichment teachers as well. And from their perspective, they'd really need to come in and see, and they'd really need to look at our data with us, and they'd really need to kind of watch how it's been going and do some focused interviews on how it's gone, how our teachers who weren't enrichment teachers, how they're feeling about the support, the level of support and the resources that they've had, what they feel their ability is now after a few years of this kind of coaching, what do they feel like they can handle, and where could we move the program to another level? And so I don't know the answer to that. Mark, I know you've had your animated hand up for a while.
Yeah, 2 questions. Well, a question and a comment. Maybe I missed it, and if I did, I'm sorry. But if I didn't miss it and it's not in there, I apologize for not thinking of it earlier and springing this on you last minute. But I think it would be important, I think it's important to quantify the dollar differences between these 2 plans. So if you know it, share it. If you don't know it, can you come back to us with a best guesstimate of what the first plan adds to the budget and what the second plan adds to the budget and the difference. So that's the first request. And then the comment I have is, me personally, I totally trust you and your staff to allocate resources in the best interests of kids. And I know everything you've done is with the best interest of kids in mind. I'm hearing a lot of questions that are, in my mind, getting a little bit close to the weeds about enrichment. And so what I think from the board's perspective, what I would request is we ask administration to consider their narrative about how kids will continue to receive enrichment throughout their programming, regardless of the budget option we choose. I think the very specifics of how that works is really, we need to back off and let that be determined by the administrators who are in the building and well-educated to do this. But we can help in publicizing how that is going to be the best decision for kids. So a comment and a question.
I think that last point's a fair one, Mark. I will say, though, that the reason I've been asking the questions the way I've been asking them is because I'm hearing that the rationale for Plan 1 is solely budget. And while I think you have a board that greatly respects that, I also think you have a board that wants to get you what you need to do what you really want to do. So I think maybe some more, to your point, maybe some more information about what the number is and actually what the differences will be in, prospective student learning. But if the reason is just budget, I think that helps us to know, because I think we have a board who, we all have an opinion on that, but we have a board who wants you to get what you need. If there's other rationale, then that needs to come in. But if it's just budgetary, then that's a different conversation.
The difference between the 2 plans is one staff member, about $80,000, but that's $80,000 per year, grown at whatever the increases are of both benefits, weighted average between benefits and whatever is negotiated. So if it's a 1-year position, it's about $80,000. If it's with staffing, you always have to consider the long term, because every time you add staff, that staff is there, and then it's a compounding, it's a permanent compounding increase.
Jay, do you know off the top of your head the absolute numbers for each one of them for Plan 1 and 2?
I don't know the total, no. I mean, it's too early to give you a number for the staff budget, but the difference between them is one staff member. And we don't know who that staff member is, but the average is about $80,000 a year, salaries and benefits for a certified teacher.
Yeah. So on a budget, what's our overall operating budget these days? Well, roughly.
20 million, including debt service and everything else. Staffing is probably 11, 10, certified staffing is around 10.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a pretty small percentage on that number.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions? So just our process from here is to continue discussing tonight, and then we will approve a plan at the meeting on the 28th, which may or may not be Plan 1, which may or may not be Plan 2, or which may or may not be, is there more discussion that we need to be having? I mean,
No, this is the point of the discussion is tonight, and so we've presented 2 plans. If there is a third option where the board would like us to continue with the enrichment programming as we have been doing and include an audit with Northwestern, then I would need some direction from the board on that, and we could fully flesh that out and have that ready for you by next meeting if you would like a Plan 3.
Do we have to vote on this at the next meeting?
No.
Is it that time critical?
We don't have to. It would help the earlier that we can do that, because we do have some new positions on here that we'd like to post and begin searching for.
One of my concerns that is related to my comment about explaining the narrative a little bit better is that enrichment, we have a long history of controversy and enrichment in this community. There's been some passionate discussions at things over the years that I've been on the board having to do with this. And it's one of those topics that is sort of like guaranteed services for families in the IEP world. Is that they hear that they think that they're entitled to some of these things just because they know the words, but it's not necessarily the better decision or what's best for kids. And so sometimes you need to explain why we're making choices we are and how it's not going to negatively impact their children. And I'm not sure that we've done that enough yet.
For my part, I don't think we need a Plan 3. At least I'm not requesting a Plan 3. I think that, same as we've said earlier tonight, that we trust you guys to staff and allocate resources as needed. I just wanted to make sure that both plans would still offer the ability for the kids to get everything that they can get.
Yeah, and I think it's really what we're talking about is what you discussed, which is the difference between a pull-out enrichment program and enrichment opportunities that are offered in the general education setting. Just like with our students that have IEPs, we try to educate as many as we can in the general education setting. 80% of our students should be successful in growing and achieving with Tier 1 services without additional support. And so lowering the class size, which we know is a value, should help to support our classroom teachers to do that more effectively and to make sure that 80% of our students can get what they need and the experiences that they need in the classroom without going out. And that's the goal of any good general education program, is that you aren't sending a bunch of kids out to special services. We want our kids together, we want them grouped with their peers, we want them having engaging discussions. Not to say that that additional support isn't helpful. All additional support is helpful. And our enrichment program has been helpful and beneficial to a lot of our students. But again, I think we're in a different spot now, just like we're reevaluating with strategic planning. We're looking at a different demographic of students. We're looking at increases in different areas, and we want to make sure that the enrichment that we're providing is accessible to all kids, is reaching all of our kids before 4th and 5th grade, so that we're front-loading those opportunities in a school-wide model so that students are exposed to critical thinking, they're exposed to those higher-level communication skills prior to having an opportunity to go into a pull-out program. And so that's where I think we can use some additional support and kind of just resetting to make sure that we're set up with a structure that can do that. So yes, it's not necessarily about reducing, it is about changing the model though, and stepping back and seeing if we need to do something different for our students. So I will try to come with a little bit of more information on that next time in terms of the two plans, and certainly send your questions in between now and then. Again, I don't want to diminish. I want to communicate that we're actually very committed to enrichment and doing it well and doing it right. And we are also trying to, in a responsible way, address the needs of the class sizes that have gotten bigger at elementary. And that's the goal of the plans.
Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions to final? No? Okay.
I would encourage you guys to think about the specific motions you bring to the table next week, or at next meeting, and which plan it represents and what to do if it doesn't pass, so you can keep moving forward.
Okay. Good deal. All right, thank you. Moving on to item C, this is just a follow-up discussion on the District 115 referendum. Just as a recap, we had Dr. Matthew Montgomery here with us that shared the high-level elements of the referendum and answered some questions. Anything you want to add to intro?
Nope, I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask me any questions if I can help support. I know that's something that more communication is going out in the community around that referendum, and obviously that impacts our students when they leave us, so.
The only comment I'll make is I appreciated Dr. Montgomery being here, and I've been in the high school 300 times in the past 5 years, probably, or 10 years, or whatever. And I've actually witnessed some of the issues that the buildings that this referendum seeks to address, and knowing that our kids in 65 and the students in 67 are the ones that will most benefit from that. I'm happy to state publicly that I'm in full support of the referendum and will vote yes for it. So I think there were some good questions answered, and at least from the building perspective, having seen it myself, there are students that go from one class wearing a coat to the other class sweating. That shouldn't happen in Lake Forest. So anyway, I'll just throw that out for anybody else if you want to discuss, but that's where I am with it.
No, I also appreciated having him come. And I suggest everyone go to his next kind of open discussion about it, because he's very transparent, in my opinion.
Comments or thoughts, discussion? Okay.
I know it's not our place, but I would just encourage them to be as transparent as possible. And videos are nice, but raw information is helpful for people to see as well. So.
Great. All right. Moving on to item D, the draft of the 2023-2024 school calendar.
Amy, can you show the draft calendar? Thanks. So this is in your packet. High-level overview, the calendar has been aligned with the high school, which is the #1 goal of our calendar drafts every year. Of note are just a couple of things. One is that we received a couple of requests about aligning the fall parent-teacher conferences with the high school so that that Friday is off for both districts, 65 and 115. We haven't done that before. We had a big discussion with our staff about how that might work. And there's pros and cons to being aligned and not being aligned. If you're aligned, then there's sort of a juggling act of getting the parent-teacher conferences that you want, or the times that you want, but then you also have that day off together as a family. If you're not aligned, it might be easier to schedule, but then you don't have that day off together. So we're happy to try it this year. The vacations are aligned, the start times are pretty similar. I don't think there's anything else that's a big surprise on here. We are already working with the high school to ensure that our curriculum nights are on different evenings. That is more of a conflict than parent-teacher conferences. So we just present it for discussion tonight. We'll approve it hopefully at our next meeting.
Lisa, do you know if we will continue to offer a Zoom option for conferences?
That's a really interesting question. So just in the last month, Lake County districts have sent around some information to each other to try and calibrate like who's doing what right now. A lot of districts are still offering Zoom opportunities. Some districts have decided to consolidate the virtual to one night and the in-person or evening, day, and the in-person to another block of time, because it'd be difficult for teachers to shift back and forth between Zoom and in-person. That's something we might consider for next year. We are anticipating that we'll continue offering that option. It's a good one for people. A lot of times people are out of town.
That's the reason I ask, is with the D 115 and 65 being aligned, a
Yeah.
lot of people may then
Take
take
advantage
advantage
of
of
that.
that out of town.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
which would kind of change our attendance numbers
Yeah,
for.
and we had a discussion about this. We have a calendar committee, just so everyone's aware, that includes staff and administrators. And we met a few times on this, and then the draft calendar goes out to all of the teachers for feedback. This was one of the things that we had some hefty discussion around. Obviously, we have staff members who also have students in D67 and 115, so want to be mindful of them being able to participate in their own children's conferences. But ultimately, we felt like there was enough slots open and available that people might be able to arrange what they need.
And this is completely off topic of the calendar, but just a thought. I've had a lot of questions about people with middle school kids asking about opportunities to meet with other teachers than just the advisory teacher. So totally off topic, but since we're on conferences, I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, middle school conferences, I'm making a note for myself because I'm sharing my screen right now. Middle school conferences are a little bit of a challenge. That way high school is as well. It's either you kind of go through the schedule and you only get a couple minutes per teacher, or, we send comments and then have one teacher represent, which can be also difficult. So I can bring that back to the team. We have a staff committee that helps work on parent-teacher conferences as well.
Anything else?
Sorry, I just thought of this now, but the emergency days at the end of the year going into the second week of June, would something similar to what's going on this year with the e-learning days occur?
Probably, yeah, probably. I mean, we haven't had to execute our plan this year, yay. But really our goals are for the end of the year are a couple of things. We don't want to end on a Monday. That's always really hard, so we try to avoid that at all costs. We also don't want to go into that second week because typically we're scheduling summer school to begin right away, and we need some prep time to get the building ready and to get teachers moved in and furniture moved. So really the goal is to keep us, really reserve those days for the end, so we don't go into that last week. So yeah, probably it will be the same kind of schedule.
Well, apparently it's 50 degrees and rainy in February.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
maybe-
no, yeah, at this moment.
So the goal will be to vote for that at the
Next
meeting. The next meeting. Okay, great.
Yeah, please send any questions or comments.
Okay, next up is item E, J for the LBMS roof.
Yep. Next meeting, I'll be bringing for approval a contract for the restoration of the middle school roof, which is at the end of its life. It was put in 1986, so it's getting near 40 years old. It's held up really well. It's actually in very good shape. There are a few sections where there are leaks that can be repaired, and I have found a company that they apply a fluid coating to the roof. It's much less expensive than repairing the roof by basically removing the deck. When you do that, not only do you risk having an open roof with the weather, but there are new energy codes that require significant amounts of insulation, and it's a big project. I've talked with many other school districts who've used this method, and they really like it. It's held up really well. They've saved a lot of money versus doing a traditional roof. And this company has gotten very good reviews, and they have stood by their product. It comes with a 20-year warranty. In talking with some of these other companies, they've said that they've not really had issues with the roof, but in the cases where they have, it's been due to a contractor who didn't apply it correctly. And they've said that in every case, this company has stood by it and come and done the repair work and fixed it. So it's really a warranty for the 20 years. If there's any leaks, they come out and patch them. It's kind of a bumper to bumper or gutter to gutter warranty for the roof. So the other point about this contract is that typically we would go out and we would buy the product, inspect the product, and go out for bid and get a bunch of contractors. This is kind of a different method whereby they go out and do it through a joint purchasing cooperative, put out a bid, and many roofers bid on it, and then whatever the low bid price is, all the other roofers agree to charge that price. So I can, instead of bidding, it's already like been a pre-bid contract. the material's also been pre-bid, so I can use roofers that are familiar with this product and will work with this company a lot and know how to use it and install it, and yet benefit from it having been bid, and so I know what pricing I'm getting. So the total cost of the roof would be about $285,000, which for a roof of this size and type is a steal. So if there's any questions about this.
Questions for Jay?
Bless you.
Our architect firm has heard of this company and worked with them and reviewed it with them. Right now, our attorney is going over the contract and making sure that it, we probably will write an addendum or another contract just to make sure the district is protected, and I'll be bringing that next time.
All right, Mark, I know, has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Jade, another question I'm just thinking of now, so I apologize for catching you off guard. Can you ballpark the cost of a traditional roof versus this $285,000 option?
People have said it's probably half, so it probably would be $500,000 to do a traditional roof repair on this roof.
Big difference. Big difference. Okay, thanks.
And that'll be brought for approval at the next meeting as well, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And the plan is to do it this summer.
Plan is to do it this summer, yeah.
And the neighbors will be, with the vacuum and stuff, you'll let them know in case there's any noise and
Yeah.
whatever.
Great.
The next thing on the agenda is me as well. It's the video surveillance system. We have video surveillance cameras in both of our schools. The last time they were updated was in 2016 at a cost of about $120,000. The technology has advanced quite a bit since that time. Those cameras actually have lasted longer than I had anticipated. They're only warranted for 3 years. We've had some fail, but a lot of them are in very good shape. So I've looked at 2 different systems. Right now, the sort of state of the art is a hosted system where it's all in the cloud. And so right now we have servers, all the servers at the district. And in the future, these servers would be hosted by another company. Having servers in the district presents some security issues. Like we have to basically make sure that they're secure and make sure that the software is up to date. There's a lot of work involved in making sure that those are secure. And then every once in a while, like every 5 to 10 years, those systems need to be replaced. Like your home computer, you have to buy a new server. So there's some upfront cost, and then the going cost is a little bit cheaper, but then periodically you need to reinvest in your system. The systems that we looked at, the one that I am recommending allows us to use our existing cameras. The other system that I had looked at, which is probably 2 years ago now, you had to buy all their cameras. And so they were pretty pushy salespeople, and they wanted to get you in. It's kind of like once you're in, then you're stuck with them forever. So they were, that was that kind of system. But the system, the AVA system that I presented also will work in conjunction with our current door access system, which is very nice. We really like our access system. It's probably one of the best ones on the market, and having the camera interface with it allows us to have one place where we can go and look at the cameras and the doors, and then we also can get camera views at the doors. So when people enter or exit, we can see who it was, basically. So we're not just relying on what fob was used or what credential was used, but we also have visual confirmation. And it also, walking buildings with our police department, they recommended that we increase our coverage for our video cameras and install some monitors in the offices as a way to enhance security. And so that's another thing we're looking at. And I've had this company go around and look at the blind spots. I've talked to the principals and our maintenance staff, and we've added cameras, so we've got pretty much complete coverage in this new system. The total cost that is projected is $115,000, and this is inclusive of all the new cameras. So on a kind of apples to apples basis with our existing cameras, the hardware would be about $50,000, and then a 5-year license is $40,000 for a total of around $90,000. Enhancing the coverage, the licenses are by camera, so the license cost goes up a little bit to about $47,000. The cameras would cost about $70,000, and that gets you to the $115,000. And the other system, the comparable price that I have here is about 2 years old, so I don't know what it would cost today, but I think this system is significantly better. And it's also been installed, would be installed by the same vendor that installed our access system, and they've been excellent. We've had some issues, and they've come out and fixed them. You know, they're there at 6:30 the next morning if we have an issue. So feel really good about recommending this system. We still have a little bit of tech work to do to make sure that our bandwidth can handle the cameras, but that's something that we have control over. And we should have some answers by the next time we bring this for approval at the next meeting. So this was also already budgeted in this year's budget, so it's not an incremental cost.
Thanks, Jay. Any questions for Jay?
Remind me, the police still have access to this?
Yeah,
with
that
this?
actually is also, will improve things. Right now, the police do have access to our current system, but they need to log into our network through VPN, and it's very clunky, and dispatch has to do it, and this will be much easier. It's because it is cloud-based. Anybody who has the right credentials can access it from a phone or a laptop in a cruiser. The police will have access, actually better access to the system than they currently do.
Great. Thank you. Anything else? RJ, last two were with you as well.
All right, I think it's student fees
Student
is
fees
next.
Yep.
This is pretty easy. We are proposing to maintain our student fees where they are. There's kind of a lot of background in here, but essentially, we did ask for a 5% increase in taxes and didn't feel that that a double whammy of increasing fees was appropriate. I think people are already contributing enough. And our fees, there's some comparables in there. Our fees are in line with what other districts would charge. We did, the prior board did come up with kind of a methodology where we look at what it costs in terms of technology, one-to-one technology fees, all of our instructional materials and instructional software costs, and then calculating it on a kind of a per student basis and splitting that 60-40, where the board would pick up 40%. That calculation would suggest a fee of $220 versus our $210. So it's really a small difference, and we think it's better to just leave our fees where they are.
Great.
If there's
Seems reasonable.
other
Any questions for Jay? Okay. Last one.
Last one is the facility usage fee. We have very few organizations use our facilities, and most of the ones that do fall into kind of groups A, B, and C. So the current policy that the board has gives priority to school district groups first, then community groups, and then not-for-profit organizations serving the local community. And so really, these are taxpayer-supported buildings. We want our local community to be able to enjoy them. So we try to make that very easy for them and not costly. And then the last group would be any for-profit groups that would be coming in and earning a profit off of the use of the buildings. And for those, we charge $75 an hour. The only thing that I'm suggesting doing is increasing. We do pass through the cost of a custodian. So when we do outsource our buildings or rent our buildings, we like to have a staff member there to supervise. And we do have to pay them overtime, so we pass that cost along. That cost is increasing from $40 to $42 an hour, but we're suggesting making that would be the only change, keeping everything else the same.
Okay. Questions, comments? Okay. Thanks for synthesizing all that, Jay. Great. So we'll be approving that next meeting as well. Okay. Moving on to item 7, two last things here, public comment. Second opportunity for public comment. If there's anybody in the room that would like to address the board, you can do so now. Not seeing anybody.
I do want to just ask for any positive thoughts sent to the students in Washington, D.C. right now. Everyone was very excited, and they are there safely, and everyone was on time at 4-something this morning, meeting outside of LBMS. And had a full day, and everyone's already tired, but positive thoughts their way to make sure they're safe and get back to us safely on Thursday night.
So great they're there.
I know.
Again, yeah, awesome, thanks for that. Okay, no, and I assume nobody at home. Okay, great, then with that being said, may I have a motion to adjourn the February 14th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting at 8:09 PM?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Good night.